always be learning everything, and the everything is super important. But the leadership there's no difference, right? Leadership was the same 5 years ago, it was the same 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think what if we want to be a fast, hyper growth organization, it is much better to do it on the shoulders of giants, right? And so to be able to lean on a coach, to be able to lean on a mentor, to be able to read, books and listen to podcasts and always be getting smarter, and hopefully, God willing, we avoid some of the mistakes that others have made. I think it really is the only way for you to be a hyper-growth organization. Otherwise, you're just making all the same old dumb mistakes.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Do you believe that you know it all? Of course, it's a ridiculous question, right? How could you know it all? Well, in today's episode, we talk about always be learning everything. This comes from our special guest, Todd Conklin. He's a founder, CEO of Coldwell Banker Distinctive Properties. They were number 3,522 on the Inc. list this year. And he's got a mantra, always be learning everything. The acronym is ABLE, but we dive into what this really means. He talks about his journey of becoming the leader of a company doing billions in transactions and hundreds of people on his team. And what does it take for him to be that kind of leader? Well, he's going to always be learning something. We talk about what it means to be a learner, what it means to have coaches that push us and challenge us, and what are the real benefits there. One of the things he actually said after the recording was over, and feel certain that we can talk about this, but he's like, I've looked at coaching and those that have skin in the game, those that are paying for the coaching, actually take more ownership of it. And he's noticed this across some of the people on his team, and he's noticed it within himself too. When he's paying for something, he shows up more fully. And so you want to make sure that you have the right people in your team that you're investing in that can challenge you. I just got off the phone with a client of mine who's going through a really tough time in his business. There's some layoffs coming. The business is poised for more growth, but they got to get the right people in the right seats. Everyone knows this, but he's got to change the way he's evolving and leading. And I share that with you, not specific names, but just we're always going to be evolving. And that's one reason why Grow Think Tank has sort of a saying around evolve or die. So if you don't know the details of that, that's where that comes from. Well, here's another little thing before we get into the interview with Todd. If you are in the space of leveling up as a leader, and you truly want to be more confident, more direct, or hold people accountable for things, then let's have a conversation about what's really getting in the way. Because I've done this hundreds of times, and I know I can help you zero in on it, help you move forward, help you develop a plan, not only to grow your company, but become a more effective or extraordinary leader inside your company. Not just the leader that you need to be, but the leader that your team needs you to be. Hopefully that sounds enticing. Just go to genehammett.com and schedule a call. What we'll do inside that call is ask a few questions just to get to know what's going on and really try to dig into what's getting in the way of you growing and leading your company with power and clarity. Now, inside these conversations, sometimes we will talk about working together. Sometimes we will defer that to another call. But I want to let you know that if you take a chance and do this with me, you will not be disappointed. In fact, I really know that you'll get value out of it because I've done so many of these, and every one of them has been profound. So just go to genehammett.com and schedule a call. Now, here's the interview with Todd. Todd, how are you?
I'm great.
We're going to have a great conversation today talking about always be learning. But before we dive into that, let's talk about your company, Coldwell Banker Distinctive Properties.
Yeah, we're a brokerage. We started back in 2006, was never intended to grow. And last year we were just shy of $2 billion in sales and about $50 million in revenue.
It's pretty impressive when you think about this market that we're in. I guess you're getting the benefit of the hot market.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. Please just don't ask me what the market's going to be next year.
I want to ask you, but what do you think is going to shift other than prices are going to change and interest rates are going to change? They may not be the same as they are today, but what are the other shifts that are going on inside this world?
I mean, there's a bunch of different silos of that. That you're still going to have the people that have to buy, have to sell. And, you're going to have people that are investing in the real estate side because of inflation. You're going to have people that can't afford the real estate because of inflation. It's a really interesting conundrum. The one thing that nobody has yet been able to solve is the inventory issue. And, economics 101, supply demand. I just don't see us building our way out of or any other avenue to solve the inventory issue.
I don't see it changing either. I mean, we have 32 rental properties. I don't know if I ever told you that, Todd. As a little side business that me and my wife have is a part of this, growing empire, if you will. I say that with tongue in cheek, but we're having trouble getting windows. We're having trouble getting other pieces that have delayed projects. And imagine a lot of like new development. There's just so many problems with that. And the cost overruns have got to be just astronomical right now.
For sure. And yet people are still building and yet people are still willing to pay prices that we just thought would be unachievable 2 years ago. But here we are.
Let's switch gears a little bit because you have a team of people around you. It's not just you doing this billions of dollars in sales. You have 50 employees, about 300 agents. Is that about right?
That's correct.
You've been leading this team, and I know you have support across your different department heads and C-suite, but you talked about the value of learning, and you even have a phrase for that, always be learning. What does all that mean to the growth of your organization?
Yeah, so it's always be learning everything, and the everything is super important. But, the leadership there's no difference, right? Leadership was the same 5 years ago. It was the same 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think what if we want to be a fast, hyper growth organization, it is much better to do it on the shoulders of giants, right? And so to be able to lean on a coach, to be able to lean on a mentor, to be able to read, books and listen to podcasts and always be getting smarter and hopefully, God willing, we avoid some of the mistakes that others have made. I think it really is the only way for you to be a hyper growth organization. Otherwise, you're just making all the same old dumb mistakes.
Well, I know the value of coaching, and I want to make sure this is clear because I think someone got confused one time. You're not a client of mine. We're just having a good old-fashioned conversation about leadership and growth. Is that fair to say you're not a client?
Yep, that is fair. Yeah.
But you have distinctively seen value from a coach in this aspect. I'd like to just spend a moment here. We don't have to give out names and things like that because everyone's in different industries. They're not going to use the same kind of coaches you would use. But what have been the real value points you've gotten from having a coach in your corner?
Yeah, I might, if it's okay, just something that somebody told me a long time ago. So whenever I heard coach, for whatever reason, it didn't land right. And somebody framed it differently. And they said, listen, bottom line is you have to have people in your world that understand what it is that you're doing, where it is that you're trying to go, that have done it before. It's the gray hair whisker gray hair wisdom that people have. And some of that is going to be friends, right? Some people that are in your circle, right? You know them personally. Some of them don't even know your name. You get them through a book or through a podcast. Yes, sometimes you have to pay for access, and that may be in the way of a coach. They are all coaches and mentors in some capacity. And so I think the idea that, hey, you absolutely have to pay for a coach is probably not really accurate. I have found great value in all. So I do have coaches I pay for. I find a different level of access and focus from somebody who I'm paying to help me through a challenge and solve a problem. But all of them play a role in ensuring that I've got the right mindset, the right skill sets, and I'm in the right direction.
So what are the benefits from these coaches in your life?
It's interesting. And I think everybody that's watching your podcast probably gets this, and we can all get a little smirk. But, they say it's lonely at the top. And what that means to me is that we all get each other, right? There's one person that's going to have to make the decision. That means there's going to be one person that's going to take it on the chin if it's wrong. We as leaders tend to give all of our accolades away to others, so we get that piece. And so to be able to have conversations with people who have been there before, it gives me peace. It gives me confidence. That's certainly the wisdom, but I think the peace and the confidence to be able to have really great, vulnerable, humble conversations with other people that have been there before has been, I don't even know that I get a price on it.
So we've been talking about always be learning everything. One last question around coaching. What is one moment inside your journey as a leader that you had to change the way you see something or see yourself that you could share with us that we'd benefit from?
I think mine was very much mindset. I think I didn't grow up with it all, so I definitely probably lived in the space of limits, not abundance, fear, right? Not growth. So having a conversation with a coach one time where I was kind of on a tirade. I was telling him, what was going on and why I wasn't going to be able to do this and that and the other. And he stopped me and he just said, "Well, I cannot believe that you have built an organization as big as you have with that kind of thinking. Like, how were you able to do that?" And it just was like a 2x4 to the forehead to go, wow, yeah, I think small oftentimes. And despite the fact that I was this hyper growth company, I had a tendency to fall back into this sort of limiting belief system. So I think that was without question, probably the biggest moment for me. And so much so that I will recall that conversation over and over. Anytime I have got some opportunity in front of me and I begin to think the what if, I now think, well, okay, you think that's the end, but what if it wasn't the end? What if you could even do more? What would that look like? What would have to happen in order for fill in the blanks?
Todd just talked about mindset. He's talked about thinking smaller and that sometimes he needed to be challenged to think bigger. What challenges you to think bigger? What really keeps you thinking about something that's almost impossible? Well, I've had many conversations with leaders that are visionary, and most of the things that they've tried to do, people have said that's impossible, and they've done it anyway. In fact, they've done it despite what others may have thought about them, and maybe that pushed them along a little bit. But I want to encourage you to look at your own mindset and think bigger than you are in right now, because sometimes that's exactly what is getting in the way, is thinking small and thinking iterative. I would like for you to think about what it would be like to lead your company in a different way, more innovative, more powerful way. Think bigger. Back to Todd. I appreciate you sharing that with us. I always talk about this. I do think we learn from books and podcasts and videos and all these other things out there, but none of those formats talk back to you.
Amen.
They don't challenge
Amen.
you. So if you have to pay for access on something like that, it is hugely worth it. I know it has in my life. I've had more than a dozen coaches over the last 20 years, and every one of them has had a profound impact on who I am as a leader, as a business owner, and even as a husband, if that may sound so crazy, because both you and I have an agreement here. But we talked about always be learning everything, but there's some correlation between how you're showing up at work and how you're showing up in your personal life. How do you see that working?
Yeah, and I think that's why it is always be learning everything in my space, right? I don't think that, well, the saying is how you show up here is how you show up everywhere. And so if you're not showing up for your kids, whether you think you are not showing up for your business. If you're not showing up for your health and vitality, whether you think you are or not, you are not showing up for your spouse, and so on and so forth. So hitting all of them and striving to be your best version in all of those areas. I think that's the only way to be a hyper growth organization and to continue to deliver great value. You have to do it all.
I like to get specific here. What are we really talking about here, and how personal life and professional life are helping each other or supporting each other, or getting in the way in some cases?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a bunch of different layers to that. I might say, like, the first one that comes to mind is integrity. So I'll phrase it differently. Okay. So if you think about being completely exposed, let's just assume that your life was on television, right? And some people that you admired, that you respected, had the opportunity to see how you interacted with your kids. Are there any areas in that you would be embarrassed about? If somebody had access to see everything that you were doing from your health and vitality perspective, what you were eating, what you were drinking, the level of exercise and care you were giving to your body, if somebody could see, are there any areas that you would be embarrassed about? Same thing with your business. Those are all areas of opportunity. What it meant to me was a level of integrity. If I say I wanted to be a particular kind of person, I needed to be that person behind the curtain because it started within, not exterior. It was all very interior. And the stronger I got in each of those things, listen, we screw up all the time, right? So I'm not suggesting that anybody's perfect, but the commitment to becoming better, right? That humility to say, hey, I'm going to look behind the curtain and I'm going to judge myself. That ability to be honest enough with yourself to say, hey, I'm probably not showing up quite the way I need to, right? And then the hunger to be able to do something about it. If I can do that in all of the areas of my life, it's going to get better, right? The other piece to that would be, I think anybody who has had a challenging personal relationship and then gone out and tried to build a great business knows how difficult it is. And so working on my marriage and making sure that we're solid has completely changed my career. I haven't always had a great marriage. I've got a great one now, and it took a lot of work. It took a lot of learning. It took some coaches, believe it or not, in that space for us, and it's had a massive impact on all areas of my life.
Now, Todd just said something that I know for a fact is true, that if you have stress in your marriage, that it's going to impact your business. I've had stress in my marriage. I've been married for 20 years, coming up this August. And I want to make sure that you understand that you've got to be able to lead at home as well as leading in the office in your professional life. And the correlation between that is so profound that I want to make sure it's very clear that when you are not really able to have the kind of conversations you want to at home, how are you going to have them at work? How are you really going to be able to lead the team members and have these direct conversations that are necessary to give feedback to people? Healthy conflict, all of that's important in home and at work, and they are interrelated. Things are going well at work, it's probably going to be a little bit easier at home if you're paying attention to both. But if it's going bad at work, it's going to spill over into home. We all get that and understand that. So I'm just reminding you that you want to make sure that you are continuing to work on all of the aspects of your life. We haven't talked about health, but health is another area. If you're not living the healthy lifestyle that you know that you need to live, then you're going to feel that impact. They're all connected. Back to Todd. You've been sharing with us openly about this always be learning everything. How does this translate in how you lead your team members? Because I know you have a pretty big organization. You guys are growing fast. Are you able to be the coach that you need to be for your team members? Do you have the space in your calendar to be able to do that? Because a lot of people are just overscheduled and overwhelmed. How do you manage that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I believe so strongly in it that yes, I make the space. But I also understand that I am not the answer to all of the questions. And so my framework for any of the people I work with really, but it's always like, all right, let's identify the goals. They got to be very clear. Let's figure out the plan. Do you believe 110% you can achieve? If you execute on that plan, that you will achieve the goals? Yes, great. And then we figure out, do you have the skill sets to be able to achieve them, right? And then of course there's track and measure, blah, 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 blah. But the skill sets, once we get to the skill set piece is when it gets fun for me to be able to say, okay, I can teach this thing, or I can't teach this thing. I'm going to go out and bring in a trainer or a coach or connect that person with somebody that can help them. So it is 1000% a critical and central piece to our organization is to make sure that we are always learning.
Well, when you take on the next iteration of your company, what do you see for yourself as a leader of this, entity that you have now? Are you moving toward a more passive role and more of a chairman, or do you continue to do what you're doing now at a different capacity?
I'm going through it right now. So that's a really interesting question. I don't know. I will answer it this way. Back in 2006, when we started, I was not the man for the job. And so I went out and became the man for the job. And that leader got me through 2010. But the guy that needed to lead that organization after 2010, I wasn't the man for the job. I had to go out and learn that and get exposed and have coaches and mentors and et cetera, et cetera. And that continues to happen. God willing, it'll never stop. I love it. It's that always growth focused. And so, yes, I'm technically operating as the chairman today, but my focus is in solving more problems. I'm a believer that we focus on people. And in our organization, in our industry, we have real estate agents that serve customers, and that consumer has a problem. And if I can help solve the problem for the consumer, if I can help make it easier for my agents to solve the problems with the consumer, that is doing good work, right? That is doing God's work. And I don't need to worry about the money. The money will come, right? The growth will happen. All the growth that we have experienced has not been intentional. What's been intentional is solving more problems. And so I'm going out and solving more problems. That's my one and only focus these days.
I want to go back to this phrase you said. In the beginning, you weren't the person to do the job, but you had to do it anyway, and you had to become that person. Did you hear you right in that?
Uh-huh.
This tells me that you have been doing some coaching, because you have a sense of self-awareness around this, that you have the ability to step into something before you can create it. And that's how you actually created what you have today. Are we in alignment with kind of that phrase?
Yeah, I have my framework for that. They're my 3 H's. I don't know if that means anything, but first one's humble, next one is honest, and the last one is hungry. The humble piece is, you have to be humble enough to actually want to look and identify areas that you may be weak, maybe that you're not the man for the job, right? And that's fully transferable in every piece of life. But then you have to be honest enough to say that's an area, right? And oftentimes it's wonderful to say, yeah, I want to know, but then we get into it, kind of drink our own Kool-Aid, and we're like, oh, no. So you got to be honest enough to be able to call yourself out. But then you got to be hungry enough to pick the phone up and ask for help. You got to be hungry enough to read every book you can find and work hard, and then work harder, and then work smart. Do it all. You got to be hungry. And we all know, everybody watching this is the reason they're watching it is because they're hungry.
I agree. Those listening in, hopefully you're getting as much out of this as I am, because I love talking to leaders in the trenches like this. Todd, we've had a good time sharing this conversation around, always be learning everything. And then even getting down to the part where you're honestly talking about, I wasn't the man, so I had to become someone else. And you have a framework behind that. Really appreciate sharing all of this wisdom.
Thank you very much, Gene. Appreciate it.
My job is to help identify things that I know that you're struggling with. And this one concept of always be learning is, I think, getting in the way of a lot of CEOs that are not expanding. They're not growing. They're focused on the work, but they're not doing the work themselves. They're not becoming the person that they know they can be, whether that be something's getting in the way that you're not willing to address. It's a blind spot. All of those things are critical for you to be able to be the leader that you know you can be, and be the leader that your team deserves. So make sure that you're tuning in to more episodes here. What Todd shared with us is really an interesting way to look at it. Hopefully you'll take this to heart. I'm not saying I should be your coach, but if you think I can help you, I'd love to invite you to come into my world. Let's have a chat about your business, see what's going on. And I do this, 10 times a week with different people, mostly my paying clients, but I'm willing to treat you the same way if you're willing to take a chance on that conversation. And it's absolutely free. Just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call. When you think about your own journey as a leader, make sure you think of a growth think tank. Always think of leadership and culture and people as such a critical part to the growth of your company. And lead with courage. We'll see you next time.